On yesterday's show, I was responding to an article, Preterist Interpretation of Revelation Will Lead to Problems, by Dr. Robert Hadler. And Dr. Hadler is a graduated with honors from Dallas Theological Seminary in 1978 with a THM in New Testament Literature and Exegesis. He says he has been studying the Bible in the original Greek and Hebrew languages, and he is concerned about preterism. And he says, from my perspective, the preterist view is an unfortunate distortion of dominion theology that violates every rule of Bible interpretation. In yesterday's show, I just said this is just nonsense. Preterists are very aware of the exegetical issues in this argument, and we do follow the rules of biblical interpretation, and that is giving meaning to words, how those words are used in other contexts, like the words near and shortly and quickly. And we find these in the very first chapter of the book of Revelation. The time is near, these things must shortly take place. We also find those same words in the last chapter of Revelation, that the time is near. John is told not to seal up the prophecy because these events are going to take place shortly. We also saw in the book of Revelation that the temple was still standing when the book of Revelation was written. We know that the temple was destroyed in AD 70, and what the dispensationalist has to do is to claim that this is referring to a rebuilt temple. The problem with that is that the New Testament doesn't say anything about a rebuilt temple. And so one has to conjecture that this is a rebuilt temple, and that conjecture is based upon an already developed dispensational view of prophecy. This doesn't even count the number of gaps, the change in the covenant, postponements, and so forth that are found in dispensationalism, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. So Dr. Hadler goes on to say, the preterist view turns the graphic descriptions of end-time worldwide destruction into absurd exaggerations of local events. Well, in fact, when the Bible uses language related to local events, then we can't do anything but say that they are local. Let me give you just a couple of examples. If you look at Matthew chapter 24 verse 15, therefore when you see the abomination of desolation which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place. So here's the audience reference here. It's Jesus' present audience. If Jesus had a future audience in mind, he would have said, when they see. Then look at verse 16. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let him who is on the housetop not go down. This is a local judgment. This is a local judgment, so local in fact, that in order to escape the judgment, all you have to do is leave Judea and go to the mountains. This isn't a worldwide conflagration. This is something that is local to that particular area. And the same is true in the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 3, verse 10 says, because you have, this is to the church of Philadelphia. And by the way, these 7 churches are 7 churches that are geographically are in Asia Minor. This isn't a description of the worldwide church. This is a description of the churches of that particular period of time. It addresses those 7 particular churches. Now, there are some dispensationalists who say that each one of these churches represents 7 ages. But there is nothing in here that would tell you that. That is really imposing something on the text that you can't find. But back to Revelation chapter 3, verse 10. Because you have kept the word of my perseverance, I also will keep you from the hour of threatening, testing, that hour which is about to come upon the whole world to test those who dwell upon the earth. Now, with that type of reading, of course, this sounds like a worldwide event. Now, remember what Dr. Hadler said. He says he spent many years in a detailed study of the Bible in the original Greek and Hebrew languages. And so let's look at the original Greek of this particular passage. The hour of testing, that hour which is about to come upon the whole world. Now, the interesting thing about this is that word whole world is oikumene. It's not cosmos. In fact, it's the same language, same word that's used in Matthew chapter 24:14 about the gospel going out to the whole world. There it's oikumene as well. So here, and there's a famine that took place during the reign of Claudius that's described by Luke in Acts chapter 11, verses 27 and 28. The word is oikomene there. And it's interesting that word oikomene also appears in Luke chapter 2, verse 1, that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus, if I can get this here. Now, it came about in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that a census be taken of all the inhabited earth. Here the translation says inhabited earth, but in Revelation chapter 3, verse 10, it says whole world. And in Matthew chapter 24, 14, it's in all the world. And yet it's the same Greek word. And Dr. Haedler certainly realizes that oikomene refers not to the entire world, but it refers to a geographical limited area. In this case, the Roman Empire. And so in Revelation verse 3, verse 10, in Revelation 3:10, this hour is testing that the hour is about to come upon the oikomene, not the whole world as we know it today, but the world back then. And then it goes on to talk about to test all those who dwell upon the earth. Well, again, the Greek word there can also mean the land of Israel. And so this judgment that's coming isn't a judgment upon the entire world. It's a judgment that's going to be coming upon Israel. And it is a judgment that indeed did become upon Israel prior to and including the destruction of Jerusalem, which took place in AD 70. And so for Dr. Haedler to make that kind of statement clearly goes against a number of hermeneutical principles that he certainly is familiar with. So when he writes, the preterist interpretation of the book of Revelation blatantly ignores the clear statements of the text that the book is a description of the end times. There's no such thing. The passages I've read so far, anybody picking up the book of Revelation for the very first time and reading the very first chapter and the last chapter of the book of Revelation would get the impression that the events were to take place shortly, that the time is near, that Jesus was coming quickly. And anybody reading Revelation chapter 11 would get the impression that the temple was still standing. And since we know that the temple was destroyed in AD 70, he would assume time is near, temple was destroyed in AD 70, the book of Revelation was written prior to the destruction of Jerusalem and the tearing down of the temple, which Jesus describes in Matthew chapter 24. Then he would have to also deal with the statements regarding this judgment that's coming upon the oikomene and the judgment upon the land of Israel. I'm following the hermeneutical model that Dr. Haedler seems to claim is very important to do regarding the book of Revelation. Then, so he goes on, he says, my primary problem with the preterist view, however, is that it is a blatant example of replacement theology. It always comes down to this. In order for these critics of preterism to get their point across and to make a case for their particular position, they have to bring in this idea that somehow these guys are anti-Semitic, that they have it in for the Jews. And so they want to maintain this idea that preterists teach that the church replaces Israel. Church does not replace Israel. Now, some amillennialists have taken the position that the church replaces Israel, but that certainly hasn't been a position of preterists. Certainly I haven't taken the position that the church replaces Israel. In factuality, all of the promises made to Israel were fulfilled. They were fulfilled in the person and work of Jesus Christ. They were also fulfilled in the outpouring of the Holy Spirit to the Jew first. We see this over and over again in the book of Acts. And in tomorrow's show, I'm going to deal with some of the issues related to replacement theology in order to deal with the critics of preterism.